Hey everyone, Dr. Nicola Ducharme here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about how I assess people for mycotoxin illness. And there was a conversation that came up this morning in my wellness community, my Facebook wellness community, about, patients with chronic illness, especially people with Lyme disease, and the need, whether or not they need to test for mycotoxins as, part of the puzzle of what can be going on. And so the first thing I want to say is I think testing for mycotoxins is really key. I think it's a really important piece to look at. More and more in my work with my chronic Lyme and co-infection patients, I am seeing mycotoxins being a big issue. And there's a lot of people that say, I don't know that I've been in a water damaged building. Our place doesn't have mold. I don't know where I could get that from. And that's all understandable. And still, mold toxicity is so insidious and so common that I really think it behooves everyone who's struggling with chronic illness to get themselves tested. So I'm going to talk about testing just for a few minutes today. I am going to do a more in-depth training on evaluation of mycotoxins and also treatment of mycotoxins. That's going to be in my wellness community next Monday. So I will post information about that. But just to kind of get the ball rolling and give my view on testing. So every doctor is different. Every doctor is going to have their own point of view. Dr. Shoemaker, Richie Shoemaker, was really one of the pioneers in this work of mycotoxins and water damaged buildings and just the impact that that can have on one's health. And he designed a panel of lab tests that he would utilize to assess one's kind of like predisposition, one's sensitivity, and certain markers that would indicate immune response, immune activity, and also inflammatory cascades within the body, right? So from a genetic standpoint, you can look at like HLA phenotypes and look at the genetic predisposition to having mold illness. However, in my view, the best way to get objective data is to do an actual mycotoxin test. So I guess the bottom line of what I'm wanting to say on this video is there are markers that can be helpful in evaluating one's immune reactivity and one's inflammation pathways. And these markers include C4A, TGF-beta, MMP9, like the C-reactive protein and SED rate, like those typical sort of common markers of inflammation that may come up in like rheumatoid arthritis, for example, or another like musculoskeletal issue, don't always come up with the mycotoxins, right? So I do agree the VEGF, MMP9, TGF-beta, C4A, those kinds of markers can be very helpful in evaluating one's status as a result of mold toxicity. However, where I think there's a challenge is there are other things that can elevate those markers, right? So I see chronic Lyme elevating those markers. I see mast cell activation syndrome elevating those markers. So, hey, Margaret in Canada. I love my Canadian friends. Welcome. So to me, it's like it's useful information, but where I think the rubber really hits the road is doing the urine mycotoxin panel. Okay, and there's two labs I've utilized for that. Real-time labs who are excellent. They do great testing. Great Plains Lab is who I'm using currently. They've come out with a much more affordable panel. And it still looks for several different mold toxins that can be attributed to different types of mold. Okay, so the first thing I do is evaluate my person, right? Evaluate the patient, the individual. And we look at those mycotoxin levels. If mycotoxins are in the body, chances are they will come out in the urine. Now, sometimes we provoke with glutathione or provoke with infrared sauna or something to try and stir up the detox so that we get more to come out. However, I really feel like if somebody comes out with a flat zero, nothing elevated on the mycotoxin panel, I'm pretty confident that that's not part of their issue. Okay. But where we do get valuable information is seeing how many of those toxins are elevated. How elevated are they? Are they a little bit? Are they crazy high? So to me, I love like really objective data that if mycotoxin levels are elevated, then mycotoxins are in the body, right? Clear as day. Just like we do with a urine heavy metals test. If they come out in the urine, they were in the body, to start with. So I feel really strongly, and this is what I do with my patients. I do the Great Plains Lab mycotoxin profile. It's $300. Not inexpensive, but in the grand scheme of what people are spending on Lyme testing and Lyme treatment and herbs and supplements and things like that, medications. If we miss this piece, it's going to cost way more time and money and energy in the long run, right? So I really, really think that it's so important. Even people with autoimmune, people with the Lyme diagnosis, mast cell activation, like mycotoxins are for sure one of the things on my short list to look for. So step one is testing the person. Now, step two then is if those levels are high, where did it come from? And trust me, you can live in a house 10 years ago that was water damaged and had mold, and you may not even know it, and you may still have those toxins inside you today, right? So it's not necessarily from your current environment. However, I strongly recommend as soon as I see a positive, elevated mycotoxin, then I'm talking to that person about having their current living environment evaluated. And I've had some patients where it's a work environment. I've had, offices or schools, college dorms are a big one. So we want to just try and make sure that we're evaluating the environments that we're in. And I do feel, and look, I'm not an expert in this piece, but I do strongly feel that it's worth having an environmental specialist come to the house and do an evaluation, someone who is an expert in that piece. Because some of the home kits and the air samples, and they don't always reflect what's really going on. So that's the next step, is to just, find resources. And obviously everyone's spread out all over the place. So there's no central kind of group that I know of for that. But, finding resources in your local community to have your living environment evaluated. And I'll just go into this a little bit more in depth in the training on Monday. But that's a real key. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that where you're living right now is the contaminating factor. But one thing to be aware of is if you move from a moldy environment or an environment that's had water damage into a clean environment, but you bring your goods with you, especially porous materials like mattresses and clothes and books and things like that, then that's a potential source for bringing mold toxins with you. And I have a couple of patients and their friends as well, whose families are massively impacted right now because mold came with personal belongings that were being moved that had been in storage for a period of time. And they got brought into the new house completely moldy, and their families have been very seriously impacted by that. So I'll sort of leave it at that for today. I just wanted to kind of give you like a little bit of an overview in terms of the evaluation. Can mold cause bone pain, Nicole? Yes, it can. Mold can cause a plethora of different symptoms, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, on Monday. But it can cause everything from, sinus congestion, headaches, migraines, neurological issues, bladder irritation, bone pain, digestive upset. I mean, the whole sort of kit and caboodle. So it's a really serious issue. I have, until a couple of years ago, just really didn't kind of jump down this rabbit hole. And, but, working with chronic Lyme, I realize now that it's kind of irresponsible of me not to. So I've really been, learning and treating a lot more of my patients for mold toxicity. And often it's the breakdown, it's the breakthrough that they need. Often it's that thing that was getting in the way of recovery from, chronic Lyme or autoimmune disease or whatever the case may be. So the Great Plains Lab is available worldwide. Nicole, I know you're in the UK. Margaret, you're in Canada. You can send that in from other countries. Great Plains is pretty good about doing international testing. It does require a doctor's order. Okay. If you go to the Great Plains Lab website, I discovered this the other day, they do have a way for people to get that lab ordered. Just go to their website and follow the patient link, and then you can read about that. If you have an integrative MD or a naturopathic doctor, they should be, familiar, or at least able to source the kit and get that for you. Obviously, any of my patients, I've pretty much encouraged everybody to do mycotoxin testing already. It's one of the things that's definitely on my short list of things to do. So I would love to see you in a few days. I will post information about the live. We'll just dive into this a little bit more in depth. I can answer some more questions. We can talk a little bit about, okay, I've got mycotoxins, now what? And just have a little bit more time to unpack this. So wishing you a wonderful few days, and I will see you again very soon.